There is a biscuit tin I kept for 40 years on a high shelf in the kitchen, labelled in my wife Margaret's round hand, just 2 words: the shore. We were saving for a stretch of coast in the far north, a place her grandmother came from, and every year we said, next year for certain. My name is Henry. I am 75 years old, and I fixed clocks for 50 of them. Today I want to tell you about the most expensive habit I ever had, the one that never cost me a single dollar, and about the day I finally stopped saving for someday. For most of my life I was a careful man, a saver. And I do not say that to brag, because I have come to see that it was not entirely a virtue. It was partly fear wearing the costume of wisdom. I put money aside, yes, I was good at that, but more than money, I learned to put life aside. I put the good bottle of wine aside for an occasion that would be worthy of it. I put the soft new shirt aside in the drawer so that I would not wear it out too soon. I put whole years aside, telling myself they were the down payment on some better, finished version of my life that was surely coming. Someday. That was my favourite word. I used it the way other men use a wrench. Someday we will do that. Someday we will go there. Someday, when things finally settle down and the time is right. Let me tell you about the someday that mattered most. Her name was Margaret, my wife. We married young, both of us not much more than children, pretending to be grown, and very early on, sitting at a kitchen table with a coffee ring staining the corner of a folded map, we made a plan. There was a stretch of coast in the far north of Scotland, a place her grandmother had come from before the war, a small village with a name we could barely wrap our mouths around. Margaret wanted to stand on that shore more than she wanted almost anything in this world. She would talk about the grey water and the cliffs and the cold wind off the sea as though she had been there, though she never had. She described that wind so often and with such pleasure that I used to tease her. I would say, "Margaret, you are the only woman I ever met who saves up a lifetime to go and be cold and rained on. And we could be cold and rained on for free, right here, on a Tuesday." And she would swat me with whatever she was holding and tell me I had no romance in me, no romance at all. And she was right. I did not. Not the kind she meant. She had romance enough for the both of us. I just kept it in a drawer, like everything else. We would go. We promised each other the way young couples promise things, with complete certainty and no idea at all of what life had planned. We even started a little tin for it on the top shelf of the kitchen, an old biscuit tin, and we labelled it in her round handwriting, just 2 words: the shore. But there was always a reason to wait. The roof needed doing, and a roof will not argue with you about its timing. Then the shop had a slow year, and then 2 slow years in a row, 2 or 3, they blur together now. Then Emma was born, and you do not take a newborn across an ocean. Then there was school, and there were braces, and there was a car that gave out on a freezing winter morning when we could least afford it. Real things. I want you to understand that part, because it matters. These were not foolish excuses, not one of them. Every single reason was a true and reasonable and responsible thing. That is the trap, you see. That is the whole quiet trick of it. Someday is almost never killed off by one big disaster you could point to. It is nibbled away by 100 sensible Tuesdays. We kept feeding that little tin a few coins at a time. We kept saying next year for certain. So many next years. The coast was not going anywhere, we told ourselves. It had been standing there for 1,000 years. Surely it could wait a little longer for two people who were only trying to be responsible. Here is the part I have learned to say out loud, though it took me a very long time to be able to. The coast could wait. Margaret could not. She got sick the autumn she turned 68. The autumn, I think it was. It might have been the late summer. It was quiet at first, the way the worst things so often are. Just a tiredness she could not seem to shake, a heaviness in the afternoons. She blamed the weather. She blamed her age. She told me to stop fussing. And I did, God help me. By the time the doctors finally had a proper name for the thing, the calendar was no longer ours to spend however we liked. I remember standing in our bedroom one grey afternoon while she slept, and I reached up and took that biscuit tin down off the shelf where it had sat collecting dust for the better part of 40 years, and I poured it out on the bed beside her. Coins and a few soft old notes. And I counted it, slowly, the way I count everything. There was enough in there. There had been enough for years, if I am honest with you. The money had never truly been the thing holding us back. The money was just the story I told myself so that I would not have to look at the real reason. And the real reason was simpler and harder than any roof or any slow year. The real reason was that I always believed we had more time than we did. We did not make it to Scotland. I want to be plain with you about that, because I think you deserve the truth and not some tidy ending tied up with a ribbon. There was no miracle trip at the 11th hour. I did not wheel her up to that far shore and watch the wind catch her hair. She grew too unwell to travel, far too unwell, and so I sat beside her bed in our own small house, instead of standing with her on that coast. And I held her hand, and that is simply and honestly how it went. The someday we had saved for so carefully, so faithfully, for almost 40 years, it never came. I need you to hear the weight of that word. It did not come late. It did not arrive in some lesser form. It did not arrive at all. Now, here is where I have to be very careful with you, because it would be the easiest thing in the world to take the wrong lesson from an old man's grief, and I would never forgive myself if you did. After Margaret passed, for a little while, I swung hard the other way. I went a bit mad with it, truthfully. I thought, well, that is it then. Saving is a fool's game. The whole thing is a lie, so spend it all and hold nothing back, and to the wind with caution. I came genuinely close to doing something rash with the small bit we had left. There was a fellow at the pub talking about a boat. A boat, can you imagine? A proper one. A thing with sails. The kind a sensible man my age has no business buying. And I will not tell you how near I came to it. I had the cheque half written one evening. To this day, I am not entirely sure what stopped me. It was not wisdom, I can tell you that much. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the fellow stopped coming round. I would like to say I came to my senses and saw it clearly. But the truth is messier than that, and I have stopped pretending otherwise. I simply did not buy the boat, and I am glad I did not, and I could not tell you exactly why I was spared it. What I learned, standing in that empty bedroom with a tin of coins in my 2 hands, was something quieter than either of those. Smaller. It was this. There is a difference between saving for your life and saving instead of your life. And somewhere along the years, I had completely stopped being able to tell the two of them apart. I was so busy guarding and protecting the future that I had forgotten the future is only ever built out of days exactly like the one I was standing in right then. Ordinary ones. Tuesday ones. The plain, unremarkable kind that you do not even think to treasure because they do not feel grand or special enough to be the someday you keep telling yourself you are waiting for. So, I changed how I do things. And I want to be honest, it was not dramatic, not the way they make it look. I did not sell the house and sail around the world with a parrot on my shoulder. An old watchmaker is not built for grand, sweeping gestures, and I would look a fool attempting one. What I did was much smaller, and I think, in its own way, much harder. I started opening the good bottle on a plain Wednesday evening, for no reason at all, except that Margaret would have wanted the cork pulled and the glasses out. I started wearing the soft shirt instead of saving it for a finer day that I now know full well may never bother to arrive. I take my granddaughter Emma down to the sea now, not the famous one across the ocean, just the nearer one, the grey little beach a couple of hours down the road, 2 hours near enough, and we eat hot chips straight out of the paper, and the gulls come and steal half of them right out of our hands, and Emma shrieks with laughter, and we do not wait for a better, finer, more worthy day to go and do it. We just go. I still save a little, I am not a foolish man, and I will not pretend the bills do not come, but I no longer save the way I once did, where every good and living thing got quietly pushed one more square down the calendar to make a little more room for a someday that kept sliding away from me like the horizon does from a man walking toward it. You know, in all my 50 years of repairing clocks, not one single customer ever set a watch down on my counter and asked me to give them back yesterday. They could not. Nobody can. I have turned the hands of thousands of clocks with these fingers, and they only ever go the one direction. Forward. Always forward. I knew that fact better than almost any man alive. I knew it in my hands, in my sleep, in my bones. And yet still, somehow, I lived as though Margaret and I had been quietly handed some special clock, one that would politely stop and wait, patient as you like, while the two of us got around at last to the life we kept promising each other over that coffee-stained map. There is no such clock. I have never once held one in my hands in all my years, and believe me, I have held thousands of them. I'm not sitting here telling you to throw your caution to the wind. Please, please hear that clearly, because it is the easiest thing to miss here. Margaret would never forgive me if I sent you all off to be reckless on the strength of her story. Keep your savings, be sensible, mind your bills. But I am asking you to take just one, someday, down off that high shelf this week. Only one. The small trip you keep folding the map for. The phone call you keep meaning to make to the person you have drifted from. The plain, ordinary afternoon with someone whose voice you simply assume you will always be able to pick up the phone and hear. Do not wait for it to grow worthy of the waiting. It is already worthy. It was always worthy. That is the whole of what I missed, standing there with that tin in my hands. The ordinary day was the treasure the entire time, and I kept mistaking it for the down payment on something better. If anything I have said found a soft spot in you, then do an old man a kindness and pass it along to someone you love, who is keeping their own little tin up on a high shelf, labelled in careful handwriting for a someday they keep nudging further down the calendar. And then, down in the comments, tell me one thing. Not the grand dream, not the once-in-a-lifetime journey. Tell me the small someday you have been putting off, the ordinary one. The one that would take you a single free afternoon to finally go and do. Write it down somewhere. You will see it tomorrow. Naming the thing out loud is how you first take it down off the shelf. So go and take your own little tin down off the high shelf. Whatever your someday is, the ordinary one. A free afternoon would do it. Do not save it so carefully for so long that you forget to ever live it. Go and live it. I will see you soon.